All right, Paul is noteworthy for a few things, and you got to tell me if I can't talk about things. I'm trying to talk about things that interest me.
Yeah.
The first thing is that Paul has a piece of broadcasting history.
Oh, Jesus.
Because Paul
You said you were going to wait.
You're leading the witness, Counselor.
Yeah, why are you leading him?
Paul is the one responsible.
Wait. See, just the way if I know where you're going, the way you're already phrasing it, you're nailing me to the cross, and I wasn't the only one.
I will give you a chance to respond.
See, but that's the misconception right there, but go ahead.
Paul is the one. Actually, I have it right here from Oapedia.
Oh, God, yeah, they wrote this. Oh, you guys are so bad. Well, I didn't know I was going to be roasted on this.
Is this something I can't talk about?
No, you can.
Okay, then
I'm
shut up.
perfectly happy to talk.
It says Paul Mecurio. This is from Wikipedia. Oapedia. Paul Mecurio is a former friend of the Opie Anthony show, who is largely responsible for the boys getting kicked off the air in 2002.
Right.
He was acting as a spotter for a couple from Virginia who had sex in St. Patrick's Cathedral. It was the holy day of obligation in the Catholic Church, so there were more people than usual in the church. It resulted in Opie and Anthony getting pulled from the air 2 days later. Paul has not been on O&A have not had Paul back on their show since their return to radio in 2004.
That sounds like it was written by a fan.
Well, this is this is the internet. This is the day into the internet. So tell us. That's an amazing story.
Yeah,
that's a famous.
You want me to tell you everything that happened from the beginning?
Just the interesting part.
All right. So I went on the show to promote some shows I was doing, and they were doing this contest called Sex for Sam, which was sponsored by Sam Adams. Right. And I'm glad we're talking about this because it's never really been sort of fully discussed. And my issue with this has always been that there's too much blame placed on one party, particularly me, and not enough spread around. Because it's not like I created the contest and walked in and said, hey, let's go do this. Third year it was running, and they basically, they basically were sponsored by Sam Adams. President Sam Adams was in the studio. There was a woman. Can I swear?
Yeah, swear.
Yeah, of course.
Blowing her boyfriend in the studio, and they were taping it with the general manager.
What the hell is the matter with you?
You said I could say.
It's not on Disney radio.
So I'm giving you the backstory so you understand. Like, this is a real loose situation, and it was organized by them. And basically the deal was
the president of Sam Adams was there while somebody was
Jim
getting
Cook.
blown.
That guy's the biggest hypocrite on the face of the earth.
Okay, go ahead.
Because he ran for the hills when the shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
And so basically, what ended up happening was, it was sanctioned by and in defense of Opie and Anthony. This was sanctioned by the radio station. They knew it was happening, and they had done it 2 years previous, and everybody was cool. And so basically, they said, you want to be one of the spotters. There were basically like 6 couples, and it was Rich Voss and a few other people. You go with a phone, and you're supposed to go around, and for points, you have sex in public. Now, they sort of had sex. Sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they would grind. Who knew exactly? You weren't, like, in your face. It wasn't in the thing, whatever. So, long story short, we're out there.
Too late for that, Paul.
And we're doing the thing. If this is getting boring, I'll stop.
No.
We're doing the contest, and everybody's calling in and doing it. And you'd be like, yeah, I'm in front of Carnegie Deli, and we're having sex. Okay, that's worth 10 points. And we're in Central Park, and that's 20 points.
I read they got extra points for a balloon knot. Is that right?
Yeah, all this different stuff. Yeah.
What's a balloon knot?
Balloon knot is when your penis is in the woman's anus or from behind, and then your balls are hanging down, in a sense, creating the knot as your balls. Sorry, Esty. Enjoy that wine. I don't know what you asked me to describe. Right. So
that was extra points.
Yeah, you got all that stuff. Okay. So here's the core of what happened.
Yeah.
I see a church. Church is on the list. Mm-hmm. Church is like 70 points. It's very high on the list, right? And Joe's good friends with these guys and hangs out with Anthony.
Try to get Joe to co-sign whatever you're saying.
No, Joe can agree or disagree. I don't know how much he knows about it.
I still get to go on the show.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how much he knows about it, but the Opie and Anthony are cool guys, and we get along fine. And they know this is how it went down. So I'm not saying anything that's not true.
Is there anything that was more points than a church?
What's that?
I say
I think it was in front of a cop. In front of a cop and a church were like the biggest points.
Okay.
So there's at the corner of 55th and Madison is a church, and outside the church is standing a cop. So we go on the side of the church on the sidewalk, and they do it, right? Okay, whatever. Like, it's not like they get naked. They kind of, whatever.
On the sidewalk?
Yeah, on the sidewalk on the side of the church. So I call up on the air, and I say to them, where are you? The church is in front of a cop. And Anthony says to me, wait a minute.
Sounds like you were trying to pull the wool. I implied that you were in the church. You're really just in front of the church.
Yeah, exactly. And they called me. Well, they called me on it. Okay,
but you were cheating.
No, I wasn't cheating.
I saw right.
It said church. Shut up. See, this this is what happens. This is what happens. You get caught up in this 12-year-old stuff like,
There's a big difference between getting somebody to have sex in a church and having sex on the sidewalk outside the church.
All right.
Yeah,
right. Well, they caught me.
Oh, that's so mercurial.
Okay. All right. So I said, okay, but it was vague on the thing. It said church. It didn't say in the church. It said church in the points. So I thought next to a church in front of a cop was pretty ballsy.
Meaning is. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. All right. So Anthony says, oh, no, you got to go in the church to get the points. I go, you want me to go in the church? And they go, yeah, you got to go in the church. That's on the air check. So I'm like, okay, it's your show. If you want me to go into church and do it, I'll go. Hang up. I try to get in that church. That church is locked up. They're closed. So we walk down the street, and I see another church, St. Pat's Cathedral. I'm like, well, that's a good church. That'll work. Jesus. Why not? Right? It's open, right? It's big. So we go in the church. Now, this is where I used bad judgment, because at this point,
this is where you used bad judgment.
You should have started the story here, because this is where it's interesting. Go ahead.
No, I mean, up to this point, it was sort of a harmless thing that they had done for 2 years, and nobody got arrested, and everything was fine. And I even asked in the pre-production meeting, has anybody ever got arrested for this? They go, nah, the cops are friends, don't worry about it. Okay, so I should have just said, no, I'm not going in the church. But I'll be honest with you, I turned into like a needy 12-year-old who wanted to, impress the guys that run the show and being good with the guys and staying good with the guys. So I went in. And that was my mistake. I shouldn't have gone in. I just should have said, you know what? I'm not going to do that. That crosses the line. But I wasn't ballsy enough or mature.
Catholic, right?
Yeah, I know, but I'm not that. That stuff doesn't matter to me.
Clearly.
Clearly not that.
So no, and so we go into the church and we go way in the back. Now some people have it like, oh, we were on the main altar and they were naked and fires were lit and there was an elephant and we were.
I think the actual quote from one of the papers was pew rocking.
Yeah, right? There was no. It was. We found. I wish. We found in the back of the church, way in the back, there was like a doorway, but the door was locked. But they had like an overhang and it was dark, and they kind of went there.
The narthex, where they do baptisms?
I don't know, or sacrifice children. I don't know. So they basically are, and they're kind of grinding. Their clothes are on. They weren't naked, and they're grinding. And a security guard comes over and says, "You can't do that. You got to get out of here." So we leave.
Wait, are they grinding or having sex? My understanding of the word grinding means no penetration.
Well, my face wasn't in his crotch. I don't know if his penis was in her vagina, but like they were, I think it was out. I think it was, I don't,
Okay.
So, it wasn't like I had to have photos.
That's not the point.
Yeah, well, it's right.
Unless Paul can get away with making him think that it was so he could get the points at cheating.
Well, I didn't know that this was going to be a roast.
Go ahead.
So basically, it's the same thing. Feels like a roast, doesn't it? Yeah.
It's like, we'll do the podcast. It'll be a nice conversation. Okay, now we're going to open up a 9-year-old wound.
I asked you, do you want to talk about? You actually said it's good to talk about this because you want to get the story out.
Okay, the story's out. So I'm not saying anything. Okay, I'm not saying anything that nobody.
You had full opportunity to retract it, to not talk about it.
If I had said no, you would have hung me like by the arm.
I would have ridiculed you, but I would have moved on. Go ahead.
Right. So anyway, basically we go to leave the church, and the cops stop us as we're leaving, and the cop says, look,
did you get in trouble with one of the priests or one of the security guards first?
Well, we got in an argument because they wanted to throw us out.
Well, hold on, Paul, because I think I happen to have
he's got all the stuff. Oh,
he's got the
audio. You're doing to me what John did to Jim Kramer on our show.
Hold on.
I will go. Who's coming right in? I can't even use the restroom. Listen, you just need to use the restroom. Don't be so. What are you being so difficult for? Oh my God! He would never. This is a sacrilegious place. He would never do anything like that.
This place, sacrilegious.
It's a Catholic church. Hey, listen, you want to be arrested? You'll be quiet, all right? No, I'm not going to be quiet. I have a right to say whatever I want to say. Just because you have a blue jacket on with a patch on doesn't mean you have authority over me. You know that when I give you a walkie-talkie, that doesn't mean to take away my constitutional rights.
Any lack of judgment yet in this?
Coming on this point.
Well, no, I had to defend what they were doing. I wasn't going to go, yeah, they were having sex in your church. I had to come up with something.
But it gets better.
We're going to go, all right? We can do whatever we want. We walked out. There's no harm, no foul.
Okay, now can you pause it for a minute? Pause it for a minute. And this is if you want to play this and you want to play this, you got to deal with both sides of the sword. You hear them giggling in the background?
Absolutely. I think you're right.
Stop. Let me say what I want to say because it's really important. You hear them giggling in the background. It is their show. They have their finger on the button. They can stop this any time they want. and they didn't. Do you want to know why?
Because they thought it was funny.
This is not only did they think it was funny. This contest was designed for exactly what they wanted. They want shock radio. That's what they got. They were loving it. Now, I'm not saying it's all their fault. Just let me finish. This is where everybody's culpable. The radio station, the guys that are on the show, the management, the president of Sam Adams, and Paul Mecurio. It's not just me.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
It's not just me.
Hold on. First of all, I actually find this subject interesting. I didn't just bring it up because I'm trying to put you on the spot.
I know, I'm fine.
It's something that happened and nobody talked about it, and I've never heard the explanation. And it seems that you're right. They were listening to it. They were laughing about it. They were encouraging it. So why do you think that you did anything wrong?
I don't think I did anything wrong. I think I think I was part of the problem, but not the entire problem.
Why are you part of the problem?
Because I should have said no going. I told you I should have used better judgment in certain places. But the problem that arose was that the emperor has no clothes. When you're let me finish. When you're a huge fan of stars like Opie and Anthony, no, the fans are never going to say they were wrong. They're going to say little no-name Paul Mecurio was wrong, and they put it on me.
Juicy lips, they call it.
Juicy lips.
Yeah.
Now, in defense of Opie and Anthony, they have never publicly said it was all Paul Mercurio's fault. It always came from the fans. Opie and Anthony and I, as far as I'm concerned, are fine. I think they got screwed, and I felt terrible about their show getting canceled, and I was part of the reason that happened, and I regret that for the rest of my life. I'm glad they got back on the air. I think the station screwed them over and ran for the hills, and nobody defended them. I was in jail for a night, and the station didn't send anybody.
That's because
the station. No. But you got to let me tell you the whole story. Like, what ended up happening was when the shit hit the fan on a contest that existed for 3 years and was sanctioned by everybody, including the general manager of the station, who was in the studio when the girl was blowing the guy. Everybody went like this, and what I'm doing on camera, people, you can't hear me see this, is I'm pointing into off microphone is pointing in different. Everybody ran for the hills to cover their own ass. I was in jail for 24 hours, and the station did, and the couple.
Did you get any points?
And the couple, by the way, came from West Virginia.
How many points for getting fucked in jail?
They had nobody to defend them. There were these two hicks, and we were in a cell, and the guy was a methadone recovering addict, and on methadone. They wouldn't give him his methadone. They sent him to the hospital. I had to go to the station the next day and say, "What are you guys doing?" They go, "What do you mean?" I go, "You let us sit in jail overnight and didn't send a lawyer. You're like the biggest radio station in the country. You're I go, "Look, this is how this is going to play out." Because I had a bunch of phone calls from press from all over the country. I said, "If you guys don't get me a lawyer and get this couple lawyer and defend us, I'm going to start telling everybody what I know, including the fact that people were getting blown in the studio while President Sam Adams was there." I said, "But you can't do this. You're being despicable. This is your contest. You asked us to be part of it. Now I'm partly responsible." So Paul, there was a lot of he said, she said.
I just want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
If it was 60 points for having sex in a church, 70 points for having sex in a church, which means that's essentially throwing down the gauntlet to you. See if you can get somebody to have sex in a church.
Yeah.
So then, why do you take any responsibility for doing any wrong bad judgment?
He's a grown up and should have a better judgment of what's right and wrong. Having said that, all the rest really, I mean, that's the first time I'm hearing the facts the way you present it, and I'm pretty much appalled.
All right,
appalled at me?
No.
Oh,
do you want to hear a little bit more of it?
Yeah, we can. I mean, no, we can. But the reason I'm happy to talk about it is because I'm just being honest about what happened, and when something like that happens, it's never one person's fault. And the only part that, and listen, to this day, I never capitalized on what happened, and a lot of people would have tried to grab their 15 minutes of fame. I got asked to go on Larry King Live at the time and on CBS This Morning and a lot of shows.
You regret that, don't you? You should have.
No, I was like,
come on, we know
I'm like, Paul. I'm not going to do that because then it would have looked like I was trying to up my name at the cost of two guys who were friends who's had me on their show a lot and who I like and who lost their show.
And have never had you on the show again.
Well, you know what? You have to ask them why that is. I'm not going to, you have to ask them.
A contest like that, I mean, how could it possibly be his fault? I mean, your intention is for people to attempt.
Listen, I got to tell you something. In my core, in the core of my being, I want it to be his fault.
That's a personal issue.
Actually, hearing it, I have to say it's not his fault.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to admit that.
It's very hard for me too.
It says it's very hard for her too.
But honestly, I think I'm partly at fault.
I am.
You weren't.
I am.
All right.
But you, as a grown-up, intelligent individual, should have not gone that way.
Oh, listen, my wife was...
Whoever put the whole thing in motion should really step up and take the responsibility.
If I can, I'm the only one that's actually in radio. I think that's at this table. I've been in here. I've been in radio for 7 years.
Tell them who you are. You're an Opie and Anthony producer.
Well, now we don't know each other officially.
Not anymore.
All right.
But
not after this podcast.
No, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's always management that is responsible for these big-time decisions like this. And it wasn't a big secret what the contest was. These things need to be approved by tons of people before they actually hit the air. So for anybody to place blame on the contest itself or Paul or the show, it's just ridiculous because this has to go through so many suit and tie people's hands before this type of a thing gets approved. It was sponsored by Sam Adams. Okay, that means that money was exchanged. That means that lawyers looked at it and signatures were on paper. So the fact that Paul just happened to be the guy is actually moot in my opinion.
Yeah, but did anybody else had any consequences from the management?
Well, I mean, Owen got fired for a few years.
No, Opie and Anthony and him, but anybody above, the decision maker.
Well, when does that ever happen?
Consequences?
When does that ever happen? Unfortunately,
they're not going to fire themselves.
When does the deserving actually get what they deserve?
Right.
It's just not the way of the world.
Right.
All right.
But
I want to ask Joe if he has anything to say. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, this is. I was actually going to direct this to
he's
Joe.
about to fall asleep.
No, I was going to because
I want you guys to have more inside discussions.
I'm sorry.
Have more one-on-one inside discussions that I can't chime in on.
No, you can chime in on this because this is just a general topic.
What I think is that you can equate this to a lot of the experiences and circumstances that comics go through, which is, the people that got screwed in the story were Opie and Anthony, Paul, and Norton, right? Because they got booted, but none of the higher-ups, none of the management got booted. And it's the same thing when you go to... Remember I did a show in Pennsylvania one time, and it was a little bit of an older crowd, and they're going, we want you guys to bring it. Be filthy. Be filthy. And I was like... How filthy. Nothing's to come out of the gate swinging. And I did. And then I bombed for 45 minutes because the crowd got disgusted. And they were like, that's way too much, man.
At what point in the 45 minutes did you say change of strategy?
That was funny.
But no, Joe,
they were wrong on this.
In what point in the 45 minutes did it start to sink into that coconut head that this is a bad strategy?
He does have a coconut head.
But that's my point is...
But after 20 minutes, didn't you think maybe that advice about being filthy was wrong?
Of course I did.
But you kept pushing it, didn't you?
No, I didn't. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I think what Natterman's saying is along the lines of what I was saying is that you take. Hang on a second. I think what he's saying and implying in his question is that you have to take some of the responsibility too, right? 20 minutes in, you can go, I'm going to shift gears.
Two jokes, I would know.
All right, hold on a second.
Two jokes, you can judge an audience.
Hold on a second. Let me finish the point.
The joke about coming in her face didn't work. The joke about shitting in her mouth ain't going to work.
All right, let me finish the point. I didn't do
that shitting in the mouth.
I didn't do 45 minutes of filth. I came out and the first 5 minutes was filthy, and then I had dug such a hole for myself that I couldn't get out of it. And
he's right.
This is 5 years ago. Quite frankly, at the time I wasn't skilled enough to get out of it. But the bottom line is this. That's not the point. The point is this: is everybody's got their line. Everybody's got their boundaries, and they immediately, for some fucking reason, assume that your boundaries are my boundaries, and they're not.
Yeah.
So when your boundaries cross mine or impose on mine, all of a sudden I go, "How dare you?"
Yeah.
And then you're standing there going, "Well, you told me that it was cool."
He makes a really good point because the reason I mentioned about this guy and this girl like having sex in the studio and everybody laughing about it is because I had some trepidation and concern about doing the contest. Like, is it legal? Whatever.
Trepidation means he was nervous about it.
Robert Kelly's not on the podcast.
But that's a really good point, Joe. Because when I saw that going down in the studio, I'm like, oh well, pretty much all bets are off. You can do whatever you want. I mean, here's the president, Sam Adams, the GM of the station's there. This woman's having sex with her boyfriend in front of people. Like, this isn't a big deal. And they've done it 2 years in the past, and I asked if it just seemed like, and the thing, church is on the list. But again, my part, from my perspective, where I messed up and my responsibility was, I should have had a line where I should have said, you know what, I'll do it in Central Park with them or whatever, but I'm not going to go in a church. Like, that's where I should have said no.
And chicken.
But what happens on that show, and Joe and Natterman will tell you, because we do these shows, especially shock jock shows like that.
I don't do it.
Well, okay, well Joe does.
I did Opie and Anthony.
There is a little bit of like, come on, there is a little bit of like the throw the rock at the cop car. I don't want to. Come on, what are you, a pussy? There's a little bit of that which I fed into at the time. Not bullying. It's just like it's kind of the nature of that particular kind of show, and you got to play ball with that.
That's bullying.
And that was my choice.
It's hard as an underling.
I'm not putting it on them when I say that.
No.
It's hard as an underling, as a peon, as a nothing, to go against the powers that be.
Does anybody want to hear a little bit more of the incriminating? No.
It's hard to hear.
It's
we got the point.
Paul starts going on to the guy. Listen, you guys all screw little boys. What the hell is the matter with you? I mean, he really.
I do feel that there's a hypocrisy.
I know, but you know.
Fine, but that
the line was, "You're afraid of a little meat and potato."
Let me tell you where I think that. Let me tell you where I think your lack of judgment was.
Okay.
At the point where you got in trouble, instead of throwing fuel on the fire, you should have been thinking, "Let me get out of here without getting arrested."
Okay, so now let me tell you something that you don't know. Let me before you make an opinion, I got to tell you something that you don't know. You can't, because this. Tell me if you know so much, and this is for everybody listening who knows this story.
Okay.
Tell me when the cops stopped me.
No, I'm talking about before the cops even came.
There was no jeopardy before the cops came.
If you would just apologize.
How are we doing on that hourglass, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think
if you would just apologize to the guy.
Can I tell you what happened? Let me tell you what happened.
Can I stop you? Go ahead.
I left the church. We walked away. We were a block.
You upset them.
No. We were a block and a half. The cop stopped us on the steps of the church. He said, "What are you guys are screwing around with Opie Anthony, right?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Get out of here. Just keep walking." That's what the cop said on the steps of St. Patrick's Cathedral.
What did you say to them?
We said, "Okay," and we walked away because we were done. And a block and a half later, 3 squad cars pulled up, and they stopped us, and they pulled us aside. And it was the same cop that stopped us. And I said to the cop off air, I go, "What are you doing?" I thought everything was fine. I said, "We weren't doing anything in there. They were just like holding hands and hugging and whatever." Look, I couldn't admit.
It was already on the radio.
Whatever. I don't know that he heard it. That's the point. So the point was that we were free and clear. What happened was the mayor's office heard the contest, called the cops, and said to the cops, "Put a stop to it, shut it down, find every one of these guys." Who was mayor at the time? Giuliani?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was. And that's why it blew up. And then I started job, and then, of course, then it just was,
Well, this is what I want to bring. We have 2 lawyers on the panel, right? Not practicing.
3.
Oh, you're a lawyer
Paul's
also?
a lawyer, Dan's a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer.
3 lawyers. Okay.
Lawyers that know nothing about this.
Editor.
Who got arrested? If I'm so smart, why did I get arrested?
So when you're saying where he should have drawn the line, but either way, if it had come out, this was live, it was on the radio, eventually it was going to come out,
This
right?
is not a friggin' legal matter. When you get caught having sex in St. Patrick's Cathedral and the priest catches you, say, I'm sorry, goodbye, and get the hell out of there.
Even still, that was still recorded.
Did, but then they caught. Listen,
it was on the radio. It was going to come out.
See, this is the problem. You're not listening.
Hold on a second. Let me say this. If we could sit here all day, we could sit here all day and bitch and moan that a cop didn't keep his word, which is fucking pointless because that's what they do.
Easy.
Look, I got friends that are cops, but I'm saying if we're going to sit here and act like it's not a corrupt system, I mean, come on.
There's a lot of corruption.
There's a lot of corruption
in on that. I don't back you on a lot.
And Kristen,
the government's our friend. But the point is this: is that we all know that this is possible. That a cop could say to you, "Listen, we're not going to do this," and then turn around and do it because of the pressures that come down on top of it.
What happened,
and exactly what played out with the cops, the pressure from above, is exactly what played out at the radio station. Yeah. Everybody said this is all good, and then the governor of radio said, or the mayor of radio said, "Cut the shit," and everybody did what they fucking had to do.
I don't have any bad
feelings. these guys all got screwed, and it's not fair.
I don't have any bad feelings.
Sucks for all the 4 of them.
He makes a great point, and that's exactly what happened, because I don't have any bad feelings toward the cop that stopped me. He actually said to me afterwards, as he was taking us in, he goes, "Look, I'm sorry, but if I don't do this, my precinct captain, I'll get fired, and he'll get fired because this came from the mayor." So the guy, I have no ill will toward anybody. It just played out the way it played out. They wanted shock radio. They got shock radio. Be careful what you ask for.
Exactly.
But don't act like the only problem I have in all of this until the day I die is be a man about it. Everybody needs to step up who is responsible for this and say, "I was responsible too."
Well, that's
what what happened was
That's naive.
And what happened was it wasn't Opie or Anthony or Norton or even the station, I think, that pinned it all on me. But a lot of the fans initially, now they're fine. It's fine. There's no problems. They come out to see me sometimes. But at the first couple of years, everybody was pissed at me and only me. And I always kept my mouth shut about it. And I always wanted to say, you know what, guys? Spread the hate around. Because I didn't create the contest. I didn't sponsor it. I didn't sanction it. I didn't encourage me to go in the church. I'm responsible, but I'm not 100% responsible. And that's always been my position, and I think it's a fair one. Like, everybody got screwed, and I feel bad about it, and I'm partly responsible, but everybody else is too, you know?